how do you find a job during the middle of the pandemic? It can be a struggle for so many people that are finding themselves in the unemployment line, or also individuals just realizing that they want to do something different with their lives. So joining us now on the Oakland County MegaCast is Jennifer Llewellyn. She's the manager for the Oakland County Workforce Development, Oakland County, Michigan Works. Great to have you back on the show. How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Ronnie and Tyler. It's great to be back.
With that, Jennifer, are you guys overwhelmed right now? Because it seems like we're going through these pauses, right? Where unemployment was skyrocketing, then it leveled off. But now with this latest pause, we're seeing the numbers go back up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been a whirlwind 9 months for our team. The peak in March and April, when the unemployment rate in Oakland County was about 19%, was pretty overwhelming for the staff. Since March, we've taken about 450,000 telephone calls with questions about unemployment insurance benefits. So, Michigan Works is a separate organization from the Michigan Unemployment Insurance Agency, but obviously there's a lot of questions and folks need a lot of support in that space. But with the recent pause, we've definitely seen an uptick in calls from workers that have questions about unemployment benefits, or people that are ready for something new and different. It's not uncommon with a new year coming that there's a New Year's resolution and people are gonna, find something new and different. I'm glad you mentioned Futures for Frontliners. So yeah, definitely a lot of ups and downs for the team this year.
I know the last time we talked to you, we had you on because you had an upcoming like recruiting event. But since then, I think things have changed for some of these employers now that those additional federal benefits have run out. What is the trend that you're seeing countywide right now?
Yeah, it's actually pretty fascinating. We had a virtual job fair on September 23rd, I think it was, and we sold out the employer spaces. We were only planning on a half-day event, but we had such demand from businesses that we ended up expanding it to a full-day event. We had over 600 job seekers that participated. And, there's still, despite the pandemic and despite the fact that there's, individuals that are being laid off, there's still a massive number of companies that are hiring, especially in, that warehousing and transportation, logistics, manufacturing, technology more than ever, right? Look at how much technology we're using in our daily lives. So, that occupational demand, when you pull this pandemic back and you pull COVID back, you still have this need for skilled labor and an educated workforce. And that's why I think, Futures for Frontliners, I can't encourage people enough to apply for that between now and December 31st. Sometimes when people think of essential workers, they're just thinking of the healthcare workers. But, if you worked in manufacturing during that time, if you worked in retail during that time, go ahead and apply for that program, because there's such a need for skilled and educated workers.
So can we talk a little bit about people that are applying for these jobs from an employer standpoint to hire people that are maybe needing to bridge the gap? Is it okay if it's obvious that you're going to be an underemployed at that time?
Yeah, sometimes, I spent probably 18 years of my career working in a Michigan Works office and working directly with workers that had been unemployed or laid off or underemployed. And we all have the tendency to overanalyze that job description and say, okay, they're looking for these 20 things and I only have 18 of them, so I'm not going to apply for it. And, what I always encourage people to do is, obviously you want to be honest. You don't want to misrepresent your skill set that you have. But if you have most of the qualifications for that position, relay that and say, these are the qualifications that I do have. These are things that I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to pursue this certification, or I'm willing to go back to school. And, programs that we have through Michigan Works, Futures for Frontliners, those are designed to help with that gap. And so if you find yourself, missing some of the credentials or missing some of the skills, we have funding available through Oakland County Michigan Works that can help individuals go back to school and be upgraded in their current career, or even pursue a new career. So, it's hard not to get discouraged when you're like, well, I don't have all of those skills, but employers are oftentimes, especially in a competitive economy are more willing to take individuals that have most of the skill sets rather than all of the skill sets.
So if I'm an employer and I need to fill a spot, will they consider someone that is overqualified for that job?
Well, I hope so. you know,
Because the thought process is
yeah,
it does cost a company time and money to bring people in and to train them. So
absolutely.
if you know they're probably not going to stick around, is it still better to fill it with someone than to leave it open and wait for someone?
Exactly. I mean, it's retention and turnover is very costly for companies. We actually just started a program last year, a business resource network program, where we deploy success coaches out to companies to meet with workers privately and confidentially to talk about any issues that might be interfering with their ability to keep the job. And so it's retention is becoming an increasing issue. One of the challenges on, overqualified oftentimes is financial. They'll assume that maybe the person, needs more money or wants more money. So, some companies are very willing to take that risk. Others are, it's definitely a balancing act for companies to make that decision if they're willing to consider overqualified candidates.
Jennifer Llewellyn with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. She's the manager for the Oakland County Workforce Development, Oakland County, Michigan Works. With that, what are the top jobs that are open right now in Oakland County?
So right now, huge demand in the warehousing and transportation, a significant demand for drivers. We had a meeting with Gardner White. They were, sharing that they had a need for drivers. Obviously, Amazon, I think we're all getting those deliveries to our front door these days. So that's one of the top in-demand jobs. Several of the healthcare positions, so medical assistants, sterile processing technicians, CNAs, there continues to be a demand there. Obviously, there's some COVID related positions as well. So the contact tracer types of positions and other supporting roles in the pandemic, and IT positions across the board, from help desk, all the way to high level programmer positions. So, it's I mentioned earlier, you peel back that pandemic and you still have the need for an educated and skilled and qualified workforce.
So going forward, there is hope on the horizon with the first of the vaccine, but what jobs do you think are going to stick around post pandemic? Because if you were unemployed from an industry, I think you're gun shy going forward. So which ones do you think are going to have lasting effects and are going to need people?
Yeah, it's that's fascinating because just in my own personal circle, I've heard from teachers and nurses that have said, like, this is not what I signed up for. And, that worries me that, we're going to lose some educators, that we're going to lose nurses, which are, top in demand occupations. Are we going to lose healthcare workers? And those are really essential to, to lives of our children, lives of our family members. The demand for registered nurses has been pretty high for quite a while in Oakland County. Same with software developers. That demand has been pretty high for quite a few years. We anticipate that. We anticipate the demand for truck drivers to continue, and then skilled trades, the plumbers and the electricians and the millwrights. And we've been working really hard the last few years with manufacturing day and increased work in the apprenticeship space, working with our labor organizations to get more skilled trade folks into the pipeline. So I guess in our four major areas of focus are advanced manufacturing, healthcare, IT, and construction. And we really see those trends continuing into the future.
Yeah, IT, I think everyone has learned during this pandemic, they're some of the real heroes
Absolutely.
during all of this. And typically a lot of companies only hire like maybe one or two people. I used to work for a federal government, and if you had to call the help desk we used to call it the helpless desk.
Oh gosh,
It
yeah.
was like, it just crazy, the need in the IT industry. But so many of the jobs that you're also talking about are jobs that require training. They're
Yes.
not jobs that anyone who has just been laid off and needs to pay their rent next month can walk into.
Sure. Many of the positions do require a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree, but some of the positions, you can earn a certification. And, that's why it's important to engage with Michigan Works as soon as possible. I know oftentimes, you get laid off and you're like, oh, I'll find something new. And then before you know it, your 26 weeks of unemployment benefits is over and you haven't found a position yet. So, we encourage people to connect with us right after they're laid off, sit down with one of our career advisors. Let's explore training programs. Let's look at the skill sets and interests and abilities that you have. And is there a short-term credential out there that someone can pursue to make themselves more marketable? We launched 2 years ago a program in partnership with Oakland Community College to train PLC and robotics technicians. We know that's a huge demand area now and into the future. If you look at these Amazon facilities, it's all robotics and automation. And, that's a short-term training program. It's about a 15-week training program. We cover the cost of tuition. We're recruiting for another cohort of students in 2021. So, just important to connect as soon as possible. Some of the IT positions in particular, you can land with a certification and then work towards that 2-year degree and 4-year degree.
Jennifer, do you think we did ourselves a disservice because for years there has been such a push for our kids to go to four-year colleges, and the trade industry, it kind of got left behind? But the need seems to be so great in the trade industry, but they're very, it's not just like picking up a wrench. There is a lot of skill that goes in to some of these trade industry jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because now I almost feel like the pendulum is swinging too far the other way. So, part of my message is we need to educate young people about all of their opportunities. So that is, apprenticeships, that is short-term training, certifications, 2-year degrees and 4-year degrees. In Oakland County in particular, a lot of the, research and design positions, a lot of the knowledge-based economy positions do require a 4-year degree. So we have to be careful. We let that pendulum swing too far one way, that everybody needed to go to the university and get a 4-year degree. Now we're hearing young people say, well, I heard that I don't have to go and get a 4-year degree. And it's like, well, no, we don't want that either. Let's keep it in the middle. What about military options? What about 2-year associate's degree programs, and truck driving is a CDL, and we really talk a lot about stackable credentials and a career pathway. So if you're intimidated, you're saying, well, I'm not really ready for a 4-year program, I don't want to be a nurse right now, I don't think I can do that. We'll start with a medical assistant, and then let's look at an LPN, and then let's look at an RN. Same thing with manufacturing. You can start with the robotics and PLC technician program, and then maybe enroll at Oakland Community College in their manufacturing and industry technology program, and then look at a bachelor's degree in engineering. So we're really trying to message around stepping stones and pathways so that people can take bite-sized pieces, I guess, for lack of a better term.
No, it's a good analogy. And with that too, what about so many of these students and college students that are remote learning who are saying, forget it, I'm going to take a gap year?
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
advice?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about that. Oakland County, we set a goal. County Executive Coulter announced at his State of the County our Oakland 80 goal. And our goal is to have 80% of Oakland County's population have an industry recognized credential or higher by 2030. So we've got 10 years to pull this off. Right now we're at about 70%. And so 10% doesn't seem like much, but it sure is. And so, how do we get more young people to enroll in post-secondary education, but also stay in and complete We have a lot of starters, but we struggle on the completion rate at some of the colleges and universities. So, how do we keep them in successfully? Also, how do we get to those folks that have some credits but no degree? So maybe, the 30, 40, 50 somethings that started their college education but didn't complete. And then obviously, how do we get more folks that need a high school diploma or GED, both young people and adults? How do we help them achieve that goal? So, it's, I hope that the young people will stick with it. I have a high school senior and an 8th grader. My senior is doing a hybrid. He has 3 classes in person at the high school and 3 online. My daughter at middle school, thank goodness, is in person. We're all grateful for that. But it's the online learning is definitely different, and everyone's not cut out for it. But I hope, if there's one message, is find a training program out there that is a match for you, for your skill sets, for your passion, some type of education. It aligns with earning potential and long-term career success with each credential, degree, certificate that you earn.
Just another minute or two with you here on the Oakland County MegaCast, and so many people are going through these changes during the pandemic, and with that, I always tell people any job you can take where you're learning something new is good, because at least you're learning something. But for people who have gaps in their resume, what do you advise to them?
Well, first of all, sometimes a resume format will help. If you've got gaps in your work history, if there's a format that doesn't, show that in a glaring way, I might want to go with more of a functional resume rather than a chronological resume. So I always recommend that. 2, what did you do during that time? Did you do volunteer work during that gap? Were you raising children during that time? Were you caring for a loved one during that time? Acknowledge that, recognize that, employers and HR people, they're humans too. We've all been in that space where we've had to have that gap, and we expect some of that now. We know workers have had to walk away because they've got kids at home that are online learning, or maybe they have health issues that are preventing them to work during the pandemic. It's very important to just be honest and transparent in that part of the hiring process. But I encourage people to be creative. You've seen people list their functions as a as a caregiver for a family member on a resume, and say I was caring for my father during that time. And to find other things that you can do. Can you enroll in an online class to keep your skills current? Can you volunteer a few hours a week to stay within your industry? Can you belong to an association? Maybe you can chair a committee or something during that time, so that you're keeping your skills and your knowledge fresh and relevant.
Jennifer Llewellyn, anything that maybe we didn't touch on that you want to add before we let you go?
I was just, encourage, I mentioned before, we've got, our 6 Oakland County, Michigan Works locations that are all delivering services virtually at this time. We have a list of virtual workshops that are available on our website. There's no cost for those. We'll be continuing those through March of next year. So if people need help with resume writing or cover letters, or how to create a LinkedIn profile for themselves, or just navigating the job search process, which can be pretty intimidating, and I hope that they'll register for one of our workshops, and they can also schedule a virtual appointment with a career advisor for one-on-one personal assistance.
And since you mentioned it with LinkedIn, I know how important is it. I will say I'm so overwhelmed with so many different social media platforms, because I don't feel like I can go on Hootsuite and use what I post on Facebook for my Instagram versus my Twitter, because I think all the platforms are so different.
Absolutely.
But how important is it to have a LinkedIn profile? And if you have a LinkedIn profile, do you need to post all the time on it?
It's, LinkedIn right now, from what we're hearing from our job seekers, that's the place where they're getting some of the most activity. So, if you're looking for a position, it's important to be on there to indicate that you're looking for something, to connect with your network. 68% of people find their next job through their network. And so LinkedIn provides that opportunity to stay connected to that network. It is important to do some engagement on there. You know, if you just put a profile up and you're not engaged at all, you're not going to have that same level of success. And so I'm not saying you've got to go on there every single day, but, you know, definitely reaching out to the network, you know, using it. And like you said, you know, I use my Twitter more on a professional basis. I use my Facebook on more of a personal side. And so, you know, it is definitely demanding when you've got all of these different platforms to manage. But LinkedIn is, I think, one of the top suggestions right now to keep that professional network connected and be able to, you know, pick up a phone or shoot them a message or text them and say, hey, you know, I'm looking for work. Do you have any suggestions or ideas or opportunities for me?
Well, thank you so much for being with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. You are always a wealth of knowledge and important knowledge for our audience. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ronnie. It's great to see all of you, and hopefully I can come back soon in the future.